you going to go with, you're going to be going with the Tailwind route, but who are you going to be bringing to support that? Are you going to be bringing that Dracovish? And then for Jack, are you going with the Trick Room option, basically? Because I think Trick Room could be pretty strong here. You go with something like the Grimmsnarl and Jellicent as a lead, for example. Maybe go for, if you have Fake Out Trick Room, and then try to bring in Rhyperior.
So many different options that these players could really go for, and I'm really excited to see, because I think that turn 0 is going to be particularly important.
Yeah.
I think that, especially when these matches are so frail and so on that fine line, you kind of need to be on that forefront of what you're going to do, and we're about to kind of get into things and see exactly how this is going to go. We have Duraludon, and we also have the Sylveon now coming out for Federico, and we will see Jack bringing the Grimmsnarl and the Duraludon.
Yeah, so this is interesting. Sylveon coming out here quite weak to the opposing Duraludon. You have to worry about a bunch of different plays here from the Grimmsnarl. Grimmsnarl can fake out either Pokemon, it can Thunder Wave either, it can also just go for a Fake Tears and double up into a slot. So lots of heavy pressure immediately here. And yeah, Federico here does not actually have a speed control with Whimsicott, so that Whimsicott might be in the back, and we're going to see the first Dynamax come out.
The first Dynamax is going to be that Duraludon, and most importantly, it's going to be the Duraludon from Jack. Jack utilizing the Grimmsnarl on its side in order to really help to try to set up for maybe some big impressive damage, but you're going to have to wait to find out, because it's also going to get matched by a Dynamax coming out from Federico.
Yeah, so, you know, that might give us some information on which Duraludon is faster here. We'll have to see if they actually speed tie or not, but Jax, of course, does go first. And that is a really big deal when you're playing this Duraludon versus Duraludon potential mirror match here. So the big question I have here is, what does Grimmsnarl go for? It's just that Fake Tears immediately.
It's going to be the Fake Tears right into Federico's Duraludon, maybe looking at Jack to do some big damage to that Duraludon, but it's actually a Steel Spike into the Sylveon, which gets the one-hit knockout, so that's going to be an early Pokemon advantage for Jack.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised to see Sylveon come out as a lead here immediately, specifically because of its matchup against the Duraludon, but I think maybe what Federico was trying to go for was try to snipe a Jellicent with the double up, but Max Steel Spike here in return. We'll go into Grimmsnarl, and we'll pick up the knockout, but that Fake Tears there earlier onto the Duraludon on Federico's end means that Jack's Duraludon will still pressure with more damage, and of course we've seen Jack's Duraludon Dynamax first and it attack first, so it makes me think that it's probably not a speed time, it's going to be naturally faster.
Naturally faster, but look at a Pokemon that's also going to be pretty fast. It's going to be a Dracovish now coming out in that place of the Sylveon for Federico, and a Jellicent now coming out for Jack.
Yeah, so I think Jack's Duraludon's in a phenomenal position right now. You have to obviously worry about the Scarf Dracovish, but Dracovish typically doesn't really have many attacks that can hit Duraludon. You can even switch out to Gastron if you have it in the back, but it's just going to be a Choice Scarf Crunch coming out immediately.
Oh, and that does so much damage to the Jellicent, over half. That's going to put it within knockout range for another Crunch, but the Max Wormwind going into the Dracovish slot, and look at how much damage that does as well. It is going to get another knockout, and Jack is just taking these knockouts left and right, getting maximum value from that Duraludon.
Yeah, and, you know, once again, moving first, it really makes me think that it's probably faster here. So we'll see a Max Wormwind in return. Let's see if this is enough to get the knockout. Oh, falls just short.
Barely going to hang on. That is so low in terms of health points, but I think we're also going to see those attack drops, which don't, and I think mattered a little bit more for the other side. But Trick Room, most importantly, going off and will be in favor a little bit of Federico's Duraludon.
Yeah, Trick Room there is an interesting decision, especially because Federico brought the Conkeldurr specifically to counter a lot of the Trick Room Pokemon. You've already committed your Dynamax to Duraludon on Jack's end, so I think right now Federico is actually in a great position because of that Trick Room. Jellicent doesn't really pressure either Pokemon with too much damage. You can pretty much double attack here relatively free, and Gastron's going to be that last one. I think Conkeldurr might be able to really pull this one off.
Conkeldurr going for the Drain Punch. Duraludon doesn't have too many legs to stand on, so it will get knocked out from that Drain Punch. And that leaves Jack with the last two Pokemon. A Jellicent in the back that's a little bit under half HP, and the Max Wormwind is going to come out first from Federico. And that does so much damage to that Gastrodon.
Yeah, it does so much damage, and I think, you know, Jack's approach was, okay, I'm going to set up the Trick Room and try to sweep in the end, but the thing is that Gastrodon and Jellicent have taken so much damage. Duraludon and Conkeldurr have not taken any damage on Federico's end. You see, it's the Flame Orb Guts variant here on Conkeldurr as well, so he'll probably be able to get a one-hit KO onto either Pokemon. So I think because Jack committed the Dynamax to Duraludon earlier, it's going to be really tough for him to actually pull out this win despite setting up the Trick Room. We know that the Duraludon on Federico's end is the Assault Vest variant as well, so you mean you have to double up into something to get a knockout. A Mach Punch here should just knock out Gastrodon.
It is going to knock out Gastrodon, which means that Jellicin's going to be the last Pokemon. You can already see the handshake on the stage, but Jellicin going for the Surf just to see what damage it can do. It's giving a little bit more information, just seeing how little that ends up doing. Duraludon firing back with a Thunderbolt. That's going to be enough to give the first game to Federico.
Yeah, that was definitely a swing of momentum there. I felt like Jack had a really early lead. He was able to, distribute so much damage with that Duraludon, but then basically didn't get a great third turn of Dynamax off it, just fainted. And I think it was great awareness by Federico to have that Conkeldurr in the back. I think you have to be bringing it into this matchup for Trick Room specifically, and that's exactly what happened, right? Jack set up the Trick Room maybe a little bit too late. I think one of the approaches he can go with is setting up Trick Room earlier on, although we now know that his Duraludon looks like is faster than Federico's. So, I mean, I think Jack's approach there was solid in the beginning, but then I think you have to not necessarily just click Trick Room for the endgame. You have to think a little bit harder about who Federico potentially has in the back. So I think I really like the approach there from the start from Jack. You could see so much damage coming out from this Life Orb Duraludon, whereas Federico's is a little bulkier, slower on Assault Vest variant. So, Jack can definitely go with the same lead, but if he wants to, I think you might want to consider not setting up Trick Room. Even if Trick Room just doesn't go up there, you at least have a better matchup because then your Duraludon will get another big attack off. And of course, the Duraludon on Federico's end had eaten that Fake Tears, but didn't really take any damage after that because no attack went into that slot.
I'm kind of wondering, think about the fact that Jack's Duraludon got 2 one-hit knockouts back-to-back. It was faster. It was able to dish out so much damage. Why not bring something like the Charizard in the back after you know that Dracovish is out of the way? Yeah,
absolutely. I think Charizard would be a great Pokemon to have, and like you mentioned, if Dracovish is knocked out, there isn't anything that's really threatening it for like a one-hit KO, other than maybe Rotom Heat coming out and clicking something like Dynamax Thunderbolt or Max Electric, for example. But I think now Federico knows, okay, well, Jack's Duraludon is consistently outspeeding me. He didn't bring Whimsicott in that last game, which I was actually pretty surprised to see. So I think, one thing that Federico might be afraid of is, of course, the fake out from the Grimmsnarl. So he might not feel super comfortable leading. And there's Grimmsnarl Jellicin, which I kind of expected in that first game.
Grimmsnarl Jellicin's going to set up for something just a little bit different here for Jack, and Federico now with the Duraludon and the Sylveon again. So a similar lead for Federico, but Jack going for something a little bit different.
Yeah, I think Jack's approach here is to definitely set up Trick Room, but this is a big turn one. If you can Dynamax the correct Pokemon, avoid a fake out from Grimmsnarl, and just double up into that Jellicin, you might just knock out and have such a big lead. So we'll see first of all, if there's a fake out coming up from Grimmsnarl, and does it target the correct slot.
Duraludon going to Dynamax, so if there is a fake out that comes out from that Grimmsnarl, this Duraludon's going to be completely immune to it. So won't get flinched. Will take the damage, but we're about to find out. Grimmsnarl is going to go for the fake out, goes into the Sylveon, so did make the correct call there, but Duraludon gets a chance to go for the Max Steel Spike. It's going to go right into the Jellicin, but it's not going to be super effective damage, so that Jellicin is going to be able to hang on and get an attack off.
Yeah, and I think Federico going for that, one, to get that defense boost, and two, not actually wanting to give Jack a free switch-in from this Trick Room, which is going up. So it's kind of a nightmare scenario if your opponent sets up Trick Room and you give them a free switch, and you'd imagine something like Rhyperior or Gastrodon can just come in Dynamax and start doing a lot of damage. So even though, that Max Steel Spike was not very effective, it's actually a play that I think makes a lot of sense, where now you can at least stall out Trick Room a little bit easier. Both Grimmsnarl and Jellicin are relatively passive Pokemon. So I think, this is a good position for Grimmsnarl to go for some support moves if it's going for something like a Light Screen or Reflect. Can also just go for Fake Tears to, start lowering that special defense and getting some damage off. Will-O-Wisp.
Ooh, a Will-O-Wisp, but Sylveon's going to avoid the attack, so Jellicin is actually not going to make a switch now, but this Yawn from the Sylveon going into the Grimmsnarl might force a switch from Jack in the future. Max Steel Spike once again going into the Jellicin is just starting to do some chip damage to it and potentially putting it within a knockout range of something like a Dracovish crunch in the back.
I actually really love how Federico is playing this despite Trick Room being up. That's already 2 turns of Trick Room basically, or 1 turn of Trick Room out of the way, and right now, Grimmsnarl is Yawn, so you feel pressure to switch it out. But if you switch it out, Sylveon can just Yawn whatever slot comes in. Duraludon's increasing the defense through Max Steel Spike, so even if Rhyperior's in the back, it's not going to do very much damage. So Grimmsnarl can continue to spam Fake Tears, but Federico is playing around Trick Room really well and not giving Jack a free switch in.
Jellicin going for the Surf. will connect with both Pokemon, but doesn't do very much. But wait a minute, what is this? Grimstar is going to switch out with the eject button. That's going to give Jack a free switch.
Yeah, if there's one way to get a free switch in, that's it. So Gastron is going to come in after that serve, but I mean, the Sylveon can just yawn that slot, and that's exactly what Federico goes for. The yawn tech is just paying dividends right now, and that's so big. Finally going for a Max Wormrin here to probably pick up the knockout here into Jellicent, and that's just another Trick Room turn gone.
Another Trick Room turn, and Gastrodon is not quite the answer to either Pokemon that are on the field. Jellicent finally gets knocked out, but that means that Trick Room only has 2 more turns, and there's no way to reset the Trick Room. Yeah,
so I've got to wonder what Jack's last Pokemon is. It is that Rhyperior, so at least Jack has been able to put himself in a position where he stalled out the Dynamax, and now he has Rhyperior under Trick Room for, you know, at least like Trick Room isn't over. So now you presumably will want to Dynamax that. You could switch out the Gastrodon. The scary thing here is I think you don't want to get yawned by the Sylveon, so one thing you could do is switch out Gastrodon into the Grimmsnarl, Dynamax the Rhyperior, and then go for something like a Max Quake into Sylveon. We'll see if that's enough to get the knockout depending on how Sylveon is trained. If Sylveon's able to get another yawn off though against Rhyperior, should it Dynamax here, that will make things a lot tougher. But despite Federico I think playing really well around this Trick Room the first couple of turns, Rhyperior is out, and I think that is one of the best Pokemon against Federico's team. And he's been able to get it out safely, and it's not going to fall asleep this turn.
No, it's not going to fall asleep yet, and it's actually going to be time to Dynamax. Jack going for the Dynamax factor onto that Rhyperior. Now, we don't know specifically how this Rhyperior is trained or what item it's holding, but if I had to guess, it'd probably be something like a weakness policy, which makes that Rhyperior ever more scary. Sylveon, though, going for a Protect from Federico's side, just in case Rhyperior or anything goes for a move, but it is going to be an Earth Power from the Gastrodon right into the Duraludon, and that Duraludon with those fake tears is going to go out pretty quickly.
And the Max Steel Spike comes out here, giving the defense boost onto both Pokemon. Will knock out the Sylveon, but Jack, more importantly, there opted not to switch out the Gastrodon, opted to just say, you know what, I'm going to get put to sleep after this yawn, but at least I'll knock out the Duraludon here. I know you're Assault vested. I've gotten the fake tears off as well, and willing to take that trade. So at this point, Jack is pretty much relying solely on Rhyperior to really dish out damage. Gastrodon, is going to be asleep for a little bit longer. I think Conkeldurr, the right Pokemon for Federico to have here in the back, but what Federico wants to aim for right now is to stall out this Trick Room. There's the Guts on the Conkeldurr as well, and then you also want to stall out the Dynamax because then you'll be doing so much more damage to Rhyperior. Rhyperior can definitely easily take an attack from this Conkeldurr right now, so I think Federico really has to stall out the Trick Room. And Dracovish is the last one here, so Gastrodon actually still provides value despite being asleep.
Yeah, Gastrodon is going to provide some value. Conkeldurr going for the Protect. We saw the Flame Orb on it before that we'll get a chance to proc after this Protect goes off, and most importantly, it's going to protect just in case this Rhyperior decides to go into that slot, but it's actually the Dracovish. Takes that Max Steel's like champ.
Yeah, but another, defense boost here for the Rhyperior. So this is at +2 defense now, and it's still Dynamax. Has one more turn of Dynamax. Trick Room was over, but because Gastrodon is still out on the field, you can't click Fish's Wren, so you're forced to click something like Crunch. Rock Slide here can't even flinch Rhyperior because it's Dynamax. So I really like the choice to go for those defense boosts, actually, to make your matchup against Conkeldurr a little bit better. I mean, if you knock out this Conkeldurr and you still have the Gastrodon around, Dracovish is relatively useless, and it's going to be tough to knock out this Gastrodon, but this is risky. I mean, if Federico actually calls this and went for Fish's Wren into Rhyperior, that would be insane. And no, it's just a Crunch.
No, it's going to be a Crunch right into the Grimmsnarl that switched into that Gastrodon's place. Now Conkeldurr's turn to attack. It will be the Drain Punch right into the Grimmsnarl as well. That does a significant chunk of damage, and most importantly, we're going to see that Conkeldurr actually moves before this Rhyperior in the Trick Room setting. And wow, look at that damage.
Yeah, so Jack making the switch there, saying, okay, I have to take a guaranteed turn to sleep here. If I get doubled up into something from like a Crunch and a Drain Punch, which is exactly what Federico goes for, then Gastrodon might even get KO'd. And if Gastrodon gets KO'd, then you can just switch the Dracovish out, back in, and just click Fish's Wren twice and win the game. So good awareness there. I like the play from both ends. Jack ends up getting the better end of the trade-off, though. Now you also have Grimmsnarl, which can click Fake Out on either of these two Pokemon. You know the Dracovish here is Choice Scarf, so yeah, I mean, I think that's an easier target here. And so the question is now, what does Rhyperior go for in terms of an attack? And it's actually a Reflect. I like that a lot, too.
Interesting. It's been a while since I've seen a Grimmsnarl that's capable of setting up screens, but I really like that from Jack.
Oh my goodness!
Oh, look at how little that does. Rhyperior going for the high horsepower. It is not going to miss this time. Dracovish getting put so low.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be really difficult for Federico to pull this off at this point. I mean, there is still that Sylveon in the back, so you can, I mean, maybe get a couple of Hyper Voices off, but given that this Grimmsnarl had a Reflect, I wouldn't be surprised to see a Light Screen as well. Looks like it's just going to be going for an attack this turn, but look how little damage Rhyperior is taking right now.
Yeah, that does a little bit. Oh, but it does get the defense drop, so maybe putting it in a little bit better range here, but the foul play, Dracovish is going to get knocked out, and this is going to be a Pokemon advantage here for Jack. Even look at the Drain Punch, it does nothing.
Yeah, even after that defense drop, and if Rhyperior connects with a high horsepower, you'll knock out Conkeldurr, and it's a 3v1, and there's the weakness policy as well.
Weakness policy activated, which means that Rhyperior's attack and special attack are going to be increased, so high horsepower going to hit for a heavy amount of damage, enough to get the knockout, and Federico is down to their last Pokemon for this game, which is that Sylveon. Yeah,
so Sylveon's going to come out, and you know, that is probably the best Pokemon because you can at least click Hyper Voice. So the question I have here is, will a Hyper Voice knock out the Rhyperior? If not, then Rhyperior will be able to retaliate and get a KO onto the Sylveon. But if you're actually able to knock out Rhyperior, I think Sylveon just wins the game. So Fake Tears coming out, no better play to really go for here on the Grimmsnarl. So let's see if Rhyperior can take this Hyper Voice.
Sylveon going for the Hyper Voice first.
Oh, and it hangs on.
It does hang on, so Rhyperior is going to be able to get off another attack.
Let's see. We saw the, Heavy Slam makes sense. That is what was coming from the Max Steel Spike earlier. So that's going to knock out Sylveon. We're going to go to a Game 3 here in this best of 3.
How exciting. There's some incredible adjustments to be able to bring this to a Game 3.
Yeah, and it all really started with the Trick Room adjustment. I thought like Trick Room plus Rhyperior looked good from Jackson, and I think, you know, that game highlights just how good it can be because despite Jack only having 2 turns to work with Rhyperior under Trick Room, he was still able to win because he was able to get these defense boost the Rhyperior enough to a point. He made some really nice calls too, you know, going for the Max Steel Spike twice, getting those defense boosts, capitalizing off Conkeldurr, protecting, and going for that prediction as well. So I think great adjustments by Jack, realizing that, hey, Trick Room is really good. I just have to keep it, or I have to put on the pressure early because in that first game, he didn't bring that Rhyperior. And so for Federico's end, I think then you have to ask yourself, okay, how do I deny this Trick Room? One way to do so is potentially going for that Dynamax on turn 1. For example, if you could Dynamax something like Sylveon instead of the Duraludon, expecting a Fake Out into that slot, and try to double up onto the Jellicent. I think that is definitely one approach to denying Trick Room. And if you deny Trick Room, I think it's a lot more difficult for Jack to win because then he's using really slow Pokemon like Rhyperior and Gastrodon.
Something else that I really liked about the way that Jack ended up playing that second game was their positioning. That Gastrodon ended up putting so much pressure onto Federico to kind of play around that, and I really like that play as well.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing we have to talk about that we didn't really mention in that last game was the eject button on Grimmsnarl as well. There's no trick on this Grimmsnarl, so you know that might seem a little odd, but because there's actually the Surf on this Jellicent, you can see the synergy where you basically give yourself a free switch in. In this case, Federico is actually able to mitigate that slightly with those Yawns, which was a really cool tech move on the Sylveon, explains why he brought it. But yeah, being able to give yourself a free switch in into something like Gastrodon and then surf yourself, I think is a really neat thing to do.
Game 3. It all comes down to this.
Yeah, so the big question here is how do you approach it from Jack's end? Do you go with the Trick Room approach again? I think it worked out really well, and I think it definitely makes sense. But then you have to consider, okay, how does Jack beat the Trick Room approach? And in my opinion, the best way to beat it is just denying it outright on turn 1 with a potential like double up, basically. So yeah, Federico will, I think, maybe want to consider who he Dynamaxes here. It's going to be the same lead once again, so let's see if we get Jellicent and Grimmsnarl. It is.
It's going to be Jellicent and Grimmsnarl. So setting things up just a little bit here, a bit differently. So we will have Jack running that Jellicent and that Grimmsnarl.
So all right, let's use Dynamaxing. I'm wondering, like, you could choose the Dynamax Sylveon here to block the Fake Out, then go for something like Max Starfall on a Draco Meteor, Dragon Pulse, even a Thunderbolt, whatever your attack is on Duraludon. And it is the Sylveon Dynamax. All right, did Jack call this? If not, Jellicent will probably be going down. That would be huge. That's the exact adjustment that I was talking about. I wanted to see.
Let's find out. I'm on the edge of my seat right now to see what goes.
Fake Out.
Going to the
Goes
Fake
to the Sylveon. Oh, that's so huge.
Oh my gosh, the crowd's absolutely wild right now because Duraludon gets a chance to go for the Thunderbolt. It's going to potentially put it into the knockout round. So let's see how much everything actually gets the paralysis.
Jellicent might be able to take a Max Starfall here, so let's see. Will it be able to hang on? Oh no, it gets the knockout.
No Trick Room available for this game.
Yeah, no Trick Room, so prowess there didn't end up mattering. This Sylveon strong enough to get that knockout once Dynamax, and that is such a big lead here for Federico. Like we were talking about, you know, now if Jack does have the Rhyperior and the Gastrodon in the back, you're staring down a Sylveon, which can just go for another max Starfall. You can Dynamax one of your 2 ground-type Pokemon. Those are pretty strong. Rhyperior is going to come in. And I think, you know, Rhyperior is still such a good Pokemon in this matchup, but Jack's not out of it by any means. One thing that we saw in the last game is how big of a threat Dracovish can be. So I think if you're on Federico's end, you're assuming that Gastrodon's going to be in the back. If you brought the Dracovish, then your goal is to just knock out everything around Rhyperior as quickly as possible. Once you pull that off, then you'll be able to just bring out the Dracovish and sweep. And Sylveon, a great Pokemon to have out in front of a Grimmsnarl. You can just go for something like another Max Starfall into that space really, really safely.
Oh my goodness, what a play. I mean, we're going to see whether or not Jack can come back from this. It's going to be the Rhyperior that Dynamaxes. Is it going to be enough, though? Because it's one of the slowest Pokemon on the field. It's not going to be able to get these attacks off very quickly. And even if it does get those defense boosts, might not be enough to get through this. Grimmsnarl going for the fake tears onto the Sylveon just to get it ready for a potential attack. But Duraludon gets a chance to go for that Flash Cannon before we see this Rhyperior go, and that's going to be really close to getting the knockout, but not quite. More importantly, there's that eject button again. Grimmsnarl gets a chance to switch out.
Yeah, but I wonder, that's actually a really cool play. If Gastrodon is in that back here and you're forced to bring it out, it is Gastrodon, and Federico targeted that slot. That's going to be so much damage onto it, and that's one step closer to winning with Dracovish.
Max Starfall goes into the Rhyperior, though, but look at how much damage.
That's really good damage,
yeah. That's about a quarter. Max Quake, though, chance to get a fire back from this Rhyperior. It's going to go right into the Duraludon, and that, well, that's going to be a knockout. I think we saw that Duraludon get a chance to do a lot of work.
Yeah, getting a lot of damage off there with Flash Cannon. I would have loved to see the double up there into the Grimmsnarl, but still really, really good damage there onto the Rhyperior. That's another turn of Dynamax down from both ends, and so Federico will get a free switch in. I'm really curious whether he has the Dracovish in the back or not, but even if you did have it in the back, this would not be the position to bring it out in. Your goal is basically to knock out the Gastrodon. Now, one side effect of setting up Misty Terrain is that the Conkeldurr actually won't get the burn from Guts, so it is going to be doing less damage, and so Federico's slowly chipping away at it, but with that Max Quick, you do get a special defense boost. So I'm wondering even if like a Max Starfall and a Drain Punch now will be able to knock out either of these 2 Pokemon. We'll have to see.
Gastrodon switching back out. Looks like Jack is really relying on Grimmsnarl to get some work done, whether it's just going to be soaking up some damage or being able to survive. And then Max Starfall from the Sylveon will be Grimmsnarl taking that, but it's just going to be for fodder. Grimmsnarl getting knocked out in the process. So Jack's down to their last 2 Pokemon. Well, Conkeldurr goes for the Drain Punch. Gets it to below half, but the weakness policy procs.
The weakness policy procs, and more importantly, Gastrodon is still conserved as well. And this Max Wake, we'll see who it targets, but is it able to just get another knockout? I mean, Rhyperior might be able to pull this off. It goes into Conkeldurr and gets the one-hit KO. Oh my goodness, this has been a back and forth game. It felt like Federico had such a great turn 1, but once again, you can see the strength of Rhyperior against Federico's entire team. So now Sylveon's Dynamax is going to end. Rhyperior has another turn of Dynamax. It's gotten multiple boosts from that Max Quick as well. Gastrodon lose all his boosts, and is it going to be Dracovish? It is Dracovish in the back. Oh boy.
Oh no. Dracovish is going to be locked into a really difficult situation against Jack's final 2 Pokemon. Doesn't really have the ability to use that Vicious Rend. So what is it going to have to go for in this situation?
Yeah, Sylveon in this position is pretty much relegated to clicking Hyper Voice. Hyper Voice does pretty good damage, and I mean, yeah, what can Dracovish really do here? You can go for maybe Crunch onto one of 2, but I'm not even sure a Crunch and a Hyper Voice is enough to knock out this Dynamax Rhyperior. And by activating the weakness policy, this Rhyperior will be able to get a one-hit KO onto either of these 3 Pokemon. So Jack might just be able to eke it out. Let's see if Crunch and Hyper Voice is enough to get the KO.
Crunch.
There's the Crunch. Here's Hyper Voice. Is it enough? Oh, it hangs on.
Rhyperior going to be able to hang on, going for the Max Rockfall into one of the last 2 Pokemon that Federico has left. It's going to be that Dracovish, which gets 1 hit knocked out. It's just Sylveon left.
Oh, it goes into Dracovish, so that gives Sylveon another opportunity to click Hyper Voice next turn, but, you know, this is a Rhyperior with +2 special defense, and Sand is up now. Her power is not going to do too much damage here, but still a sizable amount, actually. That is probably enough where, yeah, even if you knock out the Rhyperior, I think Gastrodon just wins now, so, oh my goodness, this Rhyperior pulled up. Wow. Such a great comeback, despite Trick Room not being up. Wow.
That's the power of the weakness policy Rhyperior.
And it really goes to show, I mean, like, I think Federico, probably doubled up onto that Gastrodon slot, and Jack made a great switch to conserve that Gastrodon, specifically to render Dracovish useless. Let's see if Hyper Voice can get some critical hits here. Oh, Gastrodon hangs on.
Gastrodon's going to hang on. Rhyperior gets knocked out, but that means that Gastrodon gets a chance to fire back with an Earth Power. We saw how much it did on that last turn, and that's going to be enough to get the knockout. Oh my goodness.
What a finals there.